I sat there in that conference room watching Derek stand at the front with my presentation glowing on the screen behind him. 3 months of my life, my late nights, my research, my ideas, all coming out of his mouth like he had created every single word. His smile was confident. His voice was steady. And for a moment I wondered if anyone in that room could see my hands shaking under the table. But what Derek did not know was that someone else in that room had already seen everything. Before I tell you how this all went down, let me know where you are watching from in the comments below. Hit that like button and subscribe, because you will not believe what happened when HR finally stepped in. I had been working at Palmer Marketing Group in Chicago for 2 years when this whole mess started. It was not a massive company, maybe 70 people total, but it had a solid reputation in the digital marketing space. I was 27, hungry to prove myself, and honestly, just grateful to have a job that paid decently and let me use my brain. I worked as a marketing analyst, which meant I spent most of my days buried in spreadsheets, campaign data, and strategy documents. Not glamorous, but I loved it. The office was one of those converted warehouse spaces with exposed brick and too many potted plants. My desk sat near a window that overlooked West Loop, and on good days I could watch the city move while I worked. I had a routine: coffee at 7:30 in the morning, emails until 8, deep work until lunch, more meetings than any human should endure in the afternoon. It was predictable, and I liked that. That is where Derek came in. Derek Patterson was a senior analyst 5 years deep into the company, and everyone seemed to respect him. He was 32 tall, always wore these perfectly pressed button-down shirts, and had this easy way of talking to people that made you feel like you mattered. When I first started, he was one of the few people who actually took time to show me around, explain the unspoken rules, point out which managers were cool and which ones you had to watch out for. I appreciated that. I really did. So when he started inviting me to lunch every couple of weeks, I thought I had found a genuine mentor. We would go to this sandwich place on Randolph Street, and Derek would ask about my projects, my goals, my life outside work. He seemed genuinely interested. He would give advice, share stories about his own climb up the ladder, warn me about office politics. I trusted him. That was my first mistake. In early March, everything changed. Our VP of Marketing, Mr. Thompson, called me into his office on a Tuesday afternoon. Thompson was 50 gray hair, always perfectly combed, and he had this way of looking at you over his glasses that made you feel like you were being evaluated every second. He told me he had a special project, something that could make or break a major client relationship. The client was Blue Tech Solutions, a mid-sized tech company looking to rebrand their entire digital presence. They wanted a comprehensive campaign strategy, and Thompson wanted me to lead it. I remember sitting in that chair trying not to grin like an idiot. This was it. This was the opportunity I had been waiting for. Thompson explained that if I pulled this off, there would be a promotion discussion. Senior analyst. Better pay. More responsibility. I told him I would not let him down. I left his office and immediately started planning. That night I stayed late mapping out a timeline, identifying what research I would need, sketching out initial ideas. I was excited in a way I had not been in months. This project felt like proof that I belonged here, that I was more than just another body filling a desk. The next day at lunch, Derek noticed I was distracted. He asked what was up, and I told him about the Blue Tech project. His face lit up. He congratulated me, said he knew I would crush it, offered to help if I ever needed a second set of eyes. I thanked him, told him I might take him up on that. We finished our sandwiches and walked back to the office, and I remember feeling grateful to have someone like him in my corner. Over the next few weeks, I disappeared into the work. I analyzed Blue Tech's current market position, researched their competitors, identified gaps in their strategy. I studied their target audience, built detailed personas, mapped out customer journeys. I spent weekends reading industry reports, evenings testing different messaging frameworks. My apartment became a disaster zone of coffee cups and printed charts. I did not care. I was building something real. I created a full presentation deck, 60 slides of strategy data, creative concepts, and implementation timelines. Every slide was carefully designed, every stat triple-checked, every recommendation backed by solid research. I saved everything on the company shared drive in a folder labeled with the project name and my initials. I also kept backups on my laptop, just in case. Derek would stop by my desk every few days. He would lean against my cubicle wall and ask how things were going. I would tell him because why not? We were colleagues. Friends even. I would show him some of the data I had found, run ideas past him, get his feedback. He would nod, say things like, "That is solid," or "Thompson is going to love this." Looking back, I can see how carefully he was listening, how he was taking mental notes, but at the time, I just thought he cared. About a week before the big presentation was scheduled, Derek asked if he could see the full deck. He said he wanted to give me detailed feedback, help me polish it before showing Thompson and the client. I hesitated for maybe half a second, then sent it to him. He was my mentor, right? He wanted to help. That night, he emailed me back with a few comments. "This is solid work, man. Really impressive. You have got this in the bag." I should have known something was wrong. I should have paid attention to the way he kept asking specific questions about the research methodology, the data sources, the timeline for implementation. But I was too focused on perfecting every detail to notice the warning signs. The first crack in my trust came exactly 9 days before the scheduled presentation. I was sitting at my desk reviewing some last-minute numbers when Jordan walked over. Jordan was another analyst, 28 years old, someone I had become genuinely friends with over the past year. We grabbed drinks, sometimes complained about work, talked about normal life stuff. He was one of the few people in the office I actually trusted. Jordan leaned in close and kept his voice low. "Hey, I just saw something weird." He told me he had walked past one of the smaller conference rooms on the executive floor and seen Derek in there with Mr. Thompson. The door was half open and Derek was standing at the front of the room with a laptop, clearly presenting something. Jordan said it looked serious official, not just a casual conversation. I felt my stomach drop, but I tried to rationalize it. Derek worked on lots of projects. This was probably something completely unrelated. I thanked Jordan for the heads up, but told him it was probably nothing. He gave me this look like he was not convinced, but he did not push it. That afternoon, I needed to update a few files on the shared drive. I opened the folder for my Blue Tech project and checked the activity log, something I did periodically just to keep track of versions. That is when I saw it. Derek's name. He had accessed the folder 3 days earlier. Not just opened it. Downloaded everything. The entire presentation deck. All my research documents. Every single file. My hands went cold. I sat there staring at the screen trying to make sense of it. Maybe he just wanted to review it more carefully to give me better feedback. Maybe he was showing Thompson as a way to hype up my work. But deep down, I knew. Something was very wrong. I did not confront him. Not yet. I needed to be sure. I needed to know exactly what was happening before I made any moves. So I kept working, kept acting normal, but I started paying closer attention. I watched Derek more carefully. I noticed how he would glance at me across the office, how he seemed almost too friendly, too encouraging. That evening, I stayed late. Most people had cleared out by 6:30, but I wanted to finish some edits. Around 7, I heard voices down the hall. One of them was Derek. I got up from my desk and walked quietly toward the sound. His office door was open just a crack, and I could hear him talking on the phone. "Yeah, I have been working on this Blue Tech campaign for weeks," he was saying. His voice had this tone I had never heard before. Confident, almost boastful. "It is going to be my ticket to that promotion. Thompson has already seen a preview and he loved it." I froze in the hallway. My heart was pounding so hard I thought he might hear it. Derek kept talking. "The presentation is ready. I have got all the data, the strategy, everything. This is going to put me on the map here." I felt like the floor had disappeared under me. Everything clicked into place. All those lunches, all those conversations, all that fake mentorship. He had been mining me for information. He had been planning this. And now he was going to present my work as his own. I walked back to my desk, grabbed my bag, and left. I did not trust myself to stay calm if I saw him. I drove home in a blur, my mind racing. I barely slept that night. I kept replaying every conversation, every time I had trusted him, every detail I had shared. I felt stupid, betrayed, furious. The next morning, I got to the office early. I needed to see if my suspicions were correct. I opened my email, and there it was. A meeting invitation, sent by Derek. Subject line, Blue Tech Campaign Strategy. Final presentation by Derek. The attendees list included Mr. Thompson, the entire marketing team, and several executives I did not usually interact with. The meeting was scheduled for tomorrow at 10 in the morning. I read that email 3 times. Each time I felt angrier. But I also felt something else. Clarity. I knew what I had to do. I was not going to burst into Derek's office screaming. I was not going to send an emotional email to Thompson. I was going to be smart about this. I was going to gather evidence, build my case, and let the system handle it. I spent that morning compiling everything. I pulled up the original project assignment email from Thompson dated March 15th, clearly stating that I was the lead on this campaign. I took screenshots of every email exchange I had with Derek, where I had shared ideas, asked for feedback, sent him drafts. I documented the file access logs from the shared drive showing exactly when Derek had downloaded my materials. I created a backup folder with every version of my presentation complete with metadata showing that I was the creator, that I had made every edit, that the work was mine from start to finish. Then I did something that felt a little paranoid but turned out to be crucial. I messaged Jordan. I need you to be in that meeting tomorrow. Just trust me. I will explain later. He responded immediately. Say no more. I will be there. The morning of the presentation, I woke up with my alarm at 6. I did not feel nervous exactly. I felt focused, determined. I put on my best suit, the charcoal gray one I usually saved for client meetings. I wanted to look professional, composed, unshakable, because I knew that today everything was going to come to light. I got to the office at 8:30. The meeting was not until 10, but I wanted time to prepare mentally, to review my evidence one more time to make sure I had not missed anything. I sat at my desk with my laptop open, going through the files, checking timestamps, making sure every piece of documentation was in order. At 9:45, I walked to the conference room. It was one of the bigger ones with a long table and chairs for about 15 people. Derek was already there, setting up his laptop, connecting it to the projector. He looked good, confident. He was wearing a navy suit and a tie that probably cost more than my entire outfit. When he saw me walk in, he smiled. "Hey, Cleveland, glad you could make it," he said, like he was doing me a favor by letting me attend. "You will learn something today." I just nodded. I did not trust myself to speak yet. I took a seat toward the back of the room, opened my laptop, and waited. Other team members started filing in. Jordan arrived and sat next to me, giving me a quick, questioning look. I gave him a small nod. Just wait. Then Mr. Thompson walked in, and right behind him was Natalie Brooks. Natalie was the HR director, 45 years old, sharp as a knife, with gray streaked hair she wore in a tight bun. She had a reputation for being fair, but absolutely ruthless when it came to policy violations. I had only interacted with her a handful of times, usually during onboarding or annual reviews. Her presence at a marketing strategy meeting was unusual. Very unusual. I watched as Natalie took a seat near the front, pulled out a notebook, and looked directly at Derek. Something in her expression made me sit up straighter. She was not here by accident. Thompson called the meeting to order. "All right, everyone, let us get started. Derek has been working on a major campaign strategy for Blue Tech Solutions, and today he's going to walk us through his proposal. Derek, the floor is yours." Derek stood up, clicked to the first slide, and began. "Thank you, Mr. Thompson. I have spent the last 3 months developing this comprehensive strategy for Blue Tech." I felt my jaw tighten. 3 months? My 3 months. He clicked to the next slide, and there it was. My market analysis. My charts. My exact wording. He moved through the presentation smoothly, talking about target demographics, content pillars, digital touchpoints. Every single word was something I had written. Every insight was something I had discovered. He was performing my work like an actor reading a script. Thompson was nodding, clearly impressed. A few other team members were taking notes. Someone said, "This is really thorough, Derek." Another person commented, "Great data visualization." I sat there, hands folded on the table, watching it all unfold. Part of me wanted to stand up and scream, but I stayed quiet. I waited, because I knew Natalie was watching, and I knew this was not going to end the way Derek thought it would. Derek moved through slide after slide. My competitor analysis, my audience personas, my content strategy, my implementation timeline. He even used the exact phrasing I had crafted for the value proposition. By leveraging micro-moments and optimizing for customer intent, we can increase BlueTech's engagement by 40% within the first quarter. Those were my words, my analysis, my projection, and he was delivering them like he had thought of them himself. Finally, Derek reached the last slide. And that is why I believe this strategy will not only meet BlueTech's goals, but exceed them. Thank you for your time. There was a moment of silence, then a smattering of applause. Thompson looked pleased. Excellent work, Derek. This is exactly the kind of strategic thinking we need on this team. Then Natalie spoke. Her voice was calm, but there was steel underneath it. Derek, this is very impressive. Can you tell us a bit more about your research process? Derek turned to her, still confident. Of course, I started by analyzing competitor data across the tech sector, identifying gaps in BlueTech's current positioning. Natalie nodded. And which specific tools did you use for the analytics? Derek gave a somewhat vague answer, mentioning a few industry-standard platforms. It was generic enough to sound plausible, but I could tell he was not getting into specifics. Natalie continued. And when exactly did you start working on this project? About 3 months ago, Derek said without hesitation, right after Mr. Thompson mentioned the BlueTech opportunity to the team. Natalie opened her laptop and turned the screen slightly so Thompson could see it too. Interesting. Because according to the project assignment email I have here, this project was officially assigned to Cleveland on March 15th. That was 12 weeks ago. The email came directly from you, Mr. Thompson. The room went quiet. Really quiet. I could hear someone shift in their chair. Derek's face changed. The confidence cracked just a little. Well, Cleveland and I collaborated on this. We worked together. Natalie turned to me. Is that accurate, Cleveland? I stood up slowly. My heart was racing, but my voice came out steady. Actually, Natalie, that is not accurate. I worked on this project alone. Derek never collaborated with me in any official capacity. Derek jumped in. That is not true. We discussed ideas over lunch. We worked through problems together. I looked at him. Yes, Derek. I shared some preliminary thoughts with you because I trusted you, as a colleague. I had no idea you were planning to steal my entire project and present it as your own. I turned to face the room and opened my laptop. I connected to the projector, overriding Derek's screen. This is the version history for every slide in that presentation. You can see my name on every single file, every creation date, every edit. I pulled up the access log, and here's the log from our shared drive showing that Derek downloaded all of these files 3 days ago. Not 3 months ago, 3 days ago. I pulled up the email from Thompson. Here's the original assignment clearly assigning this project to me, and here are email exchanges where I asked Derek for casual feedback, which I now realize was a mistake. The silence in that room was deafening. I could see Thompson's expression shift from confusion to understanding to anger. Other team members looked uncomfortable, avoiding eye contact with Derek. Natalie closed her laptop and stood up. Derek, I have been monitoring this situation for the past 48 hours. Derek looked like he had been punched. What? Natalie continued, her voice professional but firm. Jordan came to HR 2 days ago with concerns about unusual behavior he had observed. We initiated a quiet investigation. We reviewed file access logs, email communications, and security footage. Derek, we have clear evidence of intellectual property theft and deliberate misrepresentation of work product. Derek tried to recover. I was just trying to help elevate the work. I thought if I presented it, it would have more weight coming from a senior analyst. Thompson cut him off. That is enough, Derek. His voice was harder than I had ever heard it. This is completely unacceptable. You violated this company's ethics policy and you betrayed a colleague's trust. Natalie looked at Derek. You need to come to my office immediately. Cleveland, please stay. We will need to discuss next steps. Derek stood there for a moment, his face pale, his hands shaking slightly. He looked at me, and for a second I thought I saw something like regret. But then he grabbed his laptop and walked out of the room without another word. After Derek left the room, stayed quiet for a long moment. Then Thompson turned to me. Cleveland, I owe you an apology. This should never have happened. I am deeply sorry. I nodded. I did not know what to say. I felt relieved, vindicated, but also strangely hollow. This was not how I had imagined this project would go. Thompson continued. The project is yours, obviously. I want you to present this strategy to the Blue Tech team next week. And I want you to know that this kind of integrity and professionalism does not go unnoticed. Over the next few days, everything moved quickly. Natalie conducted a full investigation. She interviewed me, Jordan, and several other team members. She reviewed months of email correspondence and file activity. The evidence was overwhelming. The following week, I presented the campaign strategy directly to Blue Tech's executive team. I was nervous, but the work spoke for itself. They loved it. They asked smart questions, I gave solid answers, and by the end of the meeting, they were ready to move forward. We signed a contract worth over $200,000. It was the biggest win our team had seen in over a year. A few days after that, HR sent out a brief company-wide email. Derek Patterson was no longer with Palmer Marketing Group. No details were given, but everyone knew what had happened. Word spreads fast in small offices. I heard through Jordan that Derek had been terminated for violation of company ethics policies and intellectual property theft. It would be noted in his employment record, which meant any future employer calling for a reference would hear about it. I wish I could say I felt satisfied, or that there was some moment of triumph. But honestly, I just felt sad. Sad that someone would throw away their career like that. Sad that I had trusted someone who saw me as nothing more than a resource to exploit. Sad that this was how the working world could be sometimes. But I also felt something else. I felt proud. Proud that I had handled it the right way, that I had not let my anger control me, that I had trusted the process and let the evidence speak for itself. 2 months later, Thompson called me into his office again. This time, it was to offer me a promotion, Senior Marketing Analyst. It came with a significant raise, more responsibility, and a seat at bigger strategy meetings. He told me that my handling of the Derek situation had shown leadership and integrity qualities they valued. I accepted, not because I wanted revenge or validation, but because I had earned it. I had done the work. I had faced a difficult situation with professionalism. And I had come out stronger. Jordan became one of my closest friends at work. We still grabbed lunch, but now we talked about better things than office drama. I learned to be more careful about who I trusted with my work, but I did not become paranoid or closed off. I still collaborated, still shared ideas, still believed in teamwork. I just learned to protect my work and document everything. The Blue Tech campaign went on to become one of our most successful projects. It won an industry award 6 months later. My name was on that award, not Derek's. And when I stood on that stage accepting it, I thought about how different things could have been if I had handled that situation poorly. If I had confronted Derek in anger, if I had tried to take revenge myself, if I had not trusted HR and the process. Looking back now, I realize that betrayal is painful no matter how it happens. Whether it is a friend, a partner, or a coworker being betrayed, cuts deep. It makes you question your judgment, your trust, your view of people. But I also learned that how you respond to betrayal defines you more than the betrayal itself. I could have let that situation make me bitter. I could have carried that anger around, let it poison my relationships and my work. But instead, I chose to handle it professionally. I gathered evidence. I stayed calm. I let the people whose job it is to handle these situations do their job. And because of that, justice was served. Not through revenge, but through accountability. I learned that sometimes the best thing you can do is step back and let the system work. Document everything. Build your case. Trust that the truth will come out. Because it usually does. And when it does, you want to be the person who handled it with dignity, not the person who lost their composure. Derek made his choice. He chose to lie, to steal, to betray someone who trusted him. And he paid the price for that. I do not take pleasure in his downfall, but I do take comfort in knowing that actions have consequences. That integrity matters. That doing the right thing, even when it is hard, is always worth it. I still work at Palmer Marketing Group. I love my job. I have a great team. I lead important projects. And every time I start something new, I remember that presentation, that meeting, that moment when everything could have gone wrong. But it did not. Because I chose to handle it the right way. Sometimes the best revenge is not revenge at all. Sometimes it is simply doing your job well, protecting your work, and letting your integrity speak louder than any words ever could. The truth always comes out. And when it does, you want to make sure you are standing on solid ground with evidence in hand and your dignity intact. So, if you ever find yourself in a situation like mine, here is my advice. Document everything. Stay professional. Trust the process. And remember that your reputation is built not just on the work you do, but on how you handle yourself when things get difficult. Have you ever dealt with a backstabbing coworker? How did you handle it? Drop your story in the comments because I would love to hear how others have navigated these situations. If this story resonated with you, smash that like button and subscribe to the channel for more real stories about work life and everything in between. Share this with someone who might need to hear it. And remember, integrity always wins in the end. Thank you for listening, and I hope your workdays are filled with honest colleagues and fair treatment. Take care.